We'll just go ahead and go live. We'll go ahead and go live. Yeah. Just, give me 1 second here. I'm setting up still. I just figured I'd go live now, just because, well, why the heck not? I just need to spread the word a little bit. Think I'll tell them where to stick it, 'cause I'm never coming back this way again. Oh no. Okay. All right. I need to now open the book. Open the note that has the book. And need to scroll down to where I was at the end of the last one. Okay, so I'll just give a quick reminder for what happened last time. In the last book, we met our protagonist, Usuko Takibana, whose birthday it is. Happy birthday, Usuko! She's, your average 15-year-old high school girl. She fell asleep in the library after class and was attacked by a monster, which turned out to be her best friend, Emiko. From there she was rescued by Rei, Kobayashi, and Nonami Issei. And when we last left off, they had been in her apartment to inform her about what was going on and to take her to see their boss, who would explain things a little further. I'm just gonna swig a lemonade here. Nonami and Usuko were making their way down a secluded side street. The vampire girl wearing a heavy black cloak to ward off the sun's rays. As they journeyed towards their destination, the shimmering form of Rei flew behind them, her natural Oni camouflage making her completely invisible to humans as she began chasing a butterfly. She means well enough, sighed an out-of-breath Nonami, red-faced and sweating profusely. But for as long as I've known her, Kobayashi-kun has always been a bit of a klutz. She's constantly tripping or hitting her head on door frames. However, don't let that fool you, Takibana-san. I've met very few who can best Rei in a fight when she buckles down hard enough. Oh, just Usuko's fine, smiled the pinkette as the two stopped in front of a large skyscraper. What are we doing here of all places? She then asked, motioning towards the towering structure that was Ayanami Industries headquarters. I thought you said we were going to see your boss. You work for AI? Ducking into the heavily shaded overhang, the Orangeette pulled down the hood of her cloak and inhaled deeply. Not exactly, she panted in exhaustion. She wasn't used to staying awake this long, especially not on a cloudless, bright and sunshiny day like this. It's mostly a front for the organization we work for. Gardna. You okay, Ise-san? Asked concerned Usuko. She nodded as her breathing started coming back under control. But even with my yokai crystal working in overdrive, the sun is still dangerous for me. I may not disintegrate in this form, but it'll certainly burn me something awful if I'm exposed for too long. And the pinkette nodded in acknowledgement. Hey, so... Changing the subject, but can I ask you guys a question? By all means, Uso-chan, giggled Rei as she touched down behind Usuko and placed her arm playfully around the girl's shoulder. Ask away. Well, don't take this the wrong way or anything, Ise-san. But you don't look Japanese. But your name is? She shook her head. Sorry, that came out wrong. Nonami typed in a sequence of numbers into a keypad and turned back to face Usuko, chuckling softly. Because I'm not. Nonami Issei was the code name I was given when I arrived in this country. Kitties, do you mind? Sorry. What's your real name then? Replied Usuko inquisitively. I'm sorry, replied Nonami with genuine sincerity. I cannot tell you my real name right now. Well, okay then, I guess, replied Usuko. Would kind of defeat the purpose of a code name, I suppose. For some reason, Rei seemed to have an offended look on her face, so Usuko asked her what was the matter, to which she replied, You, didn't ask me my name, Uso-chan. Well, I thought it was Rei. The redhead shook her head, and Usuko sighed. Okay then, what's your real name? Rei smiled as she transformed back into Oni mode, startling the pinkette. What was that for? She stammered, still not used to the whole thing yet. Well, you see, my name's pretty hard to say with a human mouth. You guys only have, one set of teeth and a single-tipped tongue, so there are some sounds you can't pronounce. Anywho, my real name's... Author's note, it is literally impossible to speak unless you can pronounce RPLHYQX. Yeah, have fun with that. Right, said Usuko with a blink. There was absolutely no way in hell she'd ever be able to say that. I think I'll just, stick with calling you Rei for now. I'd prefer it if you did, she said as she transformed back. Our real names are top secret. Like how, Bruce, Stark is Iron Bat, but nobody knows. Nonami sighed heavily as the door clicked open. What Rei meant is that, in the monster community anyway, our names are well known. And if people discovered we're with Gardna, they might attempt to harm our loved ones. Now, please come this way, and whatever you do, don't touch anything. Is that understood? Yes, master, chided Usuko as she crossed the threshold. I'll be on my bestest behavior. As the three entered the complex, a series of crashes and other loud noises could be heard, growing increasingly louder by the minute. Oh, dear God, mumbled Rei. Don't tell me it's them. It would seem so, Rei, replied Nonami grimly, extending her right arm in front of Usuko as if to brace her. Usuko, stay behind me and stay hidden. If they spot you, we're in trouble. The pinkette nodded and gulped. What the heck was going on here? Was the base under attack or something? From both Nonami and Rei's reactions, it seems this wasn't the first time they've encountered whatever this was. Usuko was still praying that this was just a dream. That when she woke up, she'd be in the library again, drooling on a book. But she knew better. This was real, and there was likely trouble. Maybe I should transform again, she thought, unconsciously laying a hand over the crystal concealed beneath her light blue shirt. No, I might end up causing more trouble for them. Besides, I don't even know how to transform. I mean, it's not going to be as easy as thinking about it. In a flash, Usako's outfit was replaced with her purple-gray school uniform as her hair began glowing with a soft pink light. From there, the skirt grew an extra 6 inches in length, spreading outward like a ballroom dress as the blazer changed from purple to light green. From her back sprouted twin angelic wings, which folded over her shoulders like a silken shroud. In her right hand appeared an old-fashioned shotgun, and in her left, a solid gold baseball bat. When it ended, the trio stood there in a daze. "Oh, you have got to be kidding me!" screamed the enraged Mahashoujo. "It's never that easy on TV!" "Did you hear that?" said a voice from down the hall. "Sure I did," said another in reply. "Wonder if it's them." "I'm ready to find out," said the first as a green projectile rocketed down the corridor, powdering the wall behind the girls. All three barely managed to step out of the way in time as the wall behind them crumbled to dust. "What's going on here?" cried Usako, scared silly. The shock of what just happened caused it to change back to normal by accident. Huh, why did I read that so funny? Sorry, mine's a little off today. From the pile of X wall rose a figure roughly 3 feet in height, coated in dust from head to toe. It groaned. "You moved." "What else did you expect us to do?" replied Nonami, rather calm considering the situation. "Stand there and allow you to knock us down like so many bowling pins?" "Well, now that you mention it." By now, the attacker had dusted herself off enough that Usako could get a look at her. She seemed to be a child with lime green hair and yellow eyes. What was stranger, however, were the ears perched atop the young girl's head. At first, Usako thought they were just decoration, but when the girl turned to look at her, the ears perked right up. "Are you Usako?" she asked of the confused girl. It's Usako. What exactly are you?" In a flash, another girl, this one a bit younger than the first, but with the same hair and eye color, appeared at the other's side, apparently dashing in on roller skates. "I'm Kay," stated the first. "I'm Kay," giggled the second, waggling a cat-like tail in front of her. "Daddy says sent us to get you when you got here." Usako, fascinated, reached out and tried to touch Claire's tail, but the little girl hissed and jumped back. "What did I do?" she exclaimed, exasperated. "These two are young Nekomata, cat girls," clarified Nonami, "specifically kitten girls. Much like normal house cats, they don't like it when strangers try to pet them. Also, never touch their ears." "Why not?" "Do you enjoy having a face?" Though phrased as a question, Nonami's words rang hard as a statement of fact more than anything else. Well, if it isn't my dear Nanami and Ray," called a new voice, triggering the kittens to rush at it, and from out of those shadows stepped the same woman Nonami had spoken with the night before. "Who's she?" whispered Usako to Ray. That's Mrs. Lydia Nakamoto," replied the Oni girl. "She's like, sort of the one in charge here." Sorta." "Well, what do you mean?" "So you're the famous Usako Takabana, are you?" The voice was Lydia's, having suddenly appeared beside Usako, startling the pinkette. Excuse me?" she stuttered in reply, having only heard her name. "I asked if you're Usako Takibana," replied the dark-haired woman with a giggle. "Didn't want to assume, after all. You know what they say." "What did they say?" "That when you assume, you make an ass of you and me," she replied with a laugh. "Oh, come on now. It's okay to laugh if you want. You're not in any sort of trouble, Ms. Takavana. My sister and I just want to talk to you for a bit. Nothing more." By looking into the woman's dark yellow eyes, Usako could determine she was probably telling the truth. After all, Nonami and Ray were cool with her, so odds were that everything was fine. Sometime later. Well, now then, we're here, stated Lydia as the party entered the same cat-themed office from before. For some reason, however, the lights had been turned out, and the blinds were wide open. Come have a seat, said a hunched figure at the back desk. I've been waiting for you, Ms. Usako Takibana. Nervously, Usako did as she was told and sat across from the mysterious figure. The light from outside was reflecting off their orange-tinted glasses, and they had their hands folded across their mouth. I'm sorry, I think I stepped into the wrong... Let me try that again. I'm sorry, I think I stepped into the wrong manga for a second, Commander Akari, blurted Usako as she rushed to get out of there. If you excuse me, I'll just be... A loud slap came from behind Usako as the lights came back on. Rather than the infamous Father of the Year seated at the desk, Usako saw another woman who looked a lot like Lydia, only with long green hair and pigtails, much like Claire's, and, the Pinkette noted with more than a hint of jealousy, a much larger chest. Ow! Lydia! She whined, the glasses now inexplicably cracked. That wasn't very nice. Oh, Pen, you just missed the Evangelion reference. Oh no. Neither is scaring out guests, Cecily, replied Lydia, rolling her eyes. I'm sorry, Usako. My older sister can be a bit dense sometimes. It's, fine, replied Usako. Just grateful that she wasn't going to be told to get into the robot. Hopefully. Why am I here again? 2 reasons, stated Cecily in a serious tone, holding up 3 fingers. 1, to tell you what you can expect now that you come into possession of a yokai crystal. B, to possibly discover why you became what you did rather than what you should have. Carrot, to assure your safety. Oh, Ray, now you're here. Oh, you missed the you would have loved that reference I just made. Now you're gonna have to watch the VOD. I'm not, this train that has no brakes. I see, said Usako with a sweat drop. Though she could understand what this woman was saying, the Pinkette found herself desperately trying to figure out how someone like this made it into such a seemingly important position. For some reason, the word nepotism kept coming to mind. Is this okay with you? Asked Lydia. If you'd rather not go any deeper into this, I can understand. I'm not sure, said Usako, tightening her fists. It was true that she had been the one to ask Ray for the crystal, but only because she didn't want to die. If I choose not to, what happens? Well, it's still possible to debond you with your yokai crystal, replied Lydia, but you'll lose all memories associated with it. We'll return you to your home and post a guard nearby for a week or 2, at least until things can calm down at any rate. This sort of thing happens more often than you might think, so we're pretty lenient when it comes to life-or-death situations. Usako closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Ray and Nonami, especially Ray, seemed concerned that Usako wouldn't keep her crystal. If I choose to stay, will you promise to do everything you can for my friend Emiko? She may have attacked me, but we've known each other forever, and I know she would never hurt me unless she'd been forced to. Or something. We're already doing everything we can for Ms. Aame, replied Lydia. But we can't find anything that might have caused her to berserk the way she did. It's possible we missed something, but it'd have to be small. Usako nodded slowly. Then, I suppose you could use my help, couldn't you? At that, Nonami smiled warmly, and Ray rushed over to her new friend and gave her a huge bear hug, lifting her off the ground. Let me get a drink before I read this line. Oh, Usako-chan, I knew you'd stay! I knew it! Ribs, cracking, lungs, feeling, glutes, agonizing. joked Usuko as her face turned a lovely shade of sapphire blue. Oh, look! Mom's waving at me from the end of a long tunnel. No! Usuko-chan! Yelled the overexcited Oni as she laid the dazed girl on the ground. Wait! Don't go towards the light! I'll give you mouth to mouth! Ugh, that was a terrible read. Sorry. Usuko shot upwards like a rocket, accidentally smacking Ray in the chin with her forehead. No, it's fine, really. I'm okay now. She blurted with a blush. Are you alright, Ray? She said as tears rolled down her cheeks. Yes, I didn't tell you. I saw. Yeah, I'm fine. Just like bit my tongue a little. That's all. Excuse me. My word. Revenge of dinner. Glad to see you'll be staying with us, Usuko, said Nonami as she extended her hand towards the girl. Since we'll be working together for now, I suppose you'll want me to tell you my true name, Accepting her new friend's hand into her own and shaking it, Usuko replied with a playful wink. Sure thing. If you're really willing to tell me, that is. You've earned the right, she replied with a smile. My name is Maria von Orlok. Pleased to meet you. That's a nice name, replied Usuko with a smile. It's nice to meet you too, Maria. Lydia allowed the girls a few moments to converse amongst themselves before speaking again. Now then, Ms. Takabana, I suppose you've had enough for today? Well, I mean, if there's nothing else, ma'am, she replied. The day was still young, but Usuko wanted to get home as quickly as she could. Kuriko had been alone in their apartment, and she had a feeling something was wrong. At the moment, no, said Lydia. We'll call you when we need you, but I can tell something's made you anxious for home. The pinkette nodded in reply. Then you are free to go. Ray, do you mind escorting her home? Not at all, replied the girl, her tongue still sore. Come on, Usuko-chan, let's go. Ray placed a hand on her yokai crystal and transformed into her full Oni form, unfurling great crimson wings and grabbing Usuko around the waist, jumping out the nearby window, taking flight into the sky. I'll be going too, then, said Nonami as she turned to leave. Oh, but before I do, I think I might have come across something of importance earlier while at Usuko's home. Indeed? Asked Lydia. Please, don't hold back. In her living room was a table with some familiar markings. What sort of markings? Nonami glanced around the room, making sure it was just the three of them. I believe they were runes. Lydia gasped. Are you certain of this? Could it have just been a coincidence? No, ma'am, replied the vampire girl, shaking her head. I've seen them before. I am almost certain they were runes, though what they depict I don't know. Unfortunately, the table was cracked in half. Kobayashi? Indirectly. Nonami figured she wouldn't divulge the specifics unless ordered to. No need for them to know exactly how this potentially valuable artifact was destroyed. Lydia sighed. Even in such a state, we might be able to ascertain some manner of information from the table. Could you bring it to me immediately? Yes, ma'am, replied Nonami. I'll do what I can. It did belong to Usuko's grandmother, so she might not be so willing to let go. For a second, Lydia seemed to not hear the last part, but then her golden eyes widened. What did you say? The table belonged to her grandmother? Repeated Nonami, confused by the cat girl's request. Why? Is that abnormal? Cecily, having kept quiet for most of this discussion, mostly because half the stuff went right over her head, decided to pipe up. What's so important about some dumb old runes? Sister, said Lydia, exasperated by her older sibling's ditziness. Please tell me you know what runes are. Aren't those the buildings and stuff of old civilizations? No, those are ruins, sighed Lydia, face-palming. Runes are inscriptions used by the dwellers as a written language. smiled Cecily. Just one question. Yes? Who are the dwellers? Both Lydia and Nonami repeatedly slammed their heads into the wall in response. Sister, said Lydia a few moments and 3 band-aids later. Come now, think. The dwellers, remember? The humans call them witches, mages, sorcerers, and the like. Oh, now I remember. Yeah. My gods. She's the one in charge of this place, mumbled Nonami to herself in defeat. I'm glad you like it. Later, after Nonami had returned home and had herself an O-positive snack, she went to her personal library and began searching for a certain book. Now where could it be? Mumbled the vampire, searching through both ancient tomes and modern novels alike. Aha! She exclaimed, retrieving the dust-covered, leather-bound tome from the shelf. Oh my god, this is in German, so apologies for my terrible pronunciation. Die Geschichte der Monster. She began thumbing through the yellowed pages, searching for one passage in particular. Here it is, chapter 29, The Dwellers. Nonami then began reading the worn pages, her inner narrator's voice taking on a different tone than usual, as she recalled the last time someone read this to her. Though back then, the story was still ongoing, and the young Nonami had no idea that when her father read this passage to her, it would be the last time she ever saw him. Father, she whispered absent-mindedly, a single tear dropping onto the page. Though humans collectively group them together as monsters, there are dozens of beings who fit this title. For the longest time, 5 races ruled over the others. Vampires ruled the creatures who lurked in the night. The blue and red Oni kings controlled those who called the mountains and valleys their home. Shades held power over those who dwelled in the spirit realm. Mermen were the dominant rulers of the sea, while thunderbirds held the skies firmly in their talons. Keeping peace with each other, and with the humans who shunned them, the 5 kingdoms rarely had any sort of external conflict. Internal conflict, however, was another story entirely. There were those, especially among the mermen and vampires, that wished to wipe out humans entirely. These beings sought out and discovered the legendary Black Book of Ahriman, and used its power to transform themselves into a new race of creatures, ones with powers and abilities that could only be described as magical. These new beings, calling themselves the Overus, then set out on a campaign of destruction. Their first victims were the sky-dwelling thunderbirds, and those under them. Having the very wind upon which they sailed turned against them, those creatures were almost instantly wiped out. The Overus then set their sights on the mermen, and though despite many of their number having originally been mermen, the Overus showed no mercy, smiting the capital city of Atlantis in a single day, leaving those few survivors to seek refuge further beneath the waves. By this point, word had spread to the remaining 3 kingdoms of the Thunderbirds and Mermen's fate. The Lord of the Vampires made an appeal to the others that they unite their power in order to stop the Overus before it was too late, and he succeeded. The combined force of vampires, shades, and Oni was a formidable one, succeeding in not only driving the Overus into hiding, but severely draining them of their acquired power. It seemed that while the Black Book of Ahriman had bestowed them... Wait, where is it? Oh, I lost my page. Had bestowed them with great power, it wasn't infinite. And not only that, but the more they used it, the older and more decrepit they became. For centuries, the 2 factions clashed on occasion, but it almost always ended in defeat for the Overus, who, in light of their own folly, changed their names to Dwellers. The final battle took place in the frozen country called Siberia. At the behest of King Morale the Blue, a commando squad of merman survivors had located the Dwellers' final stronghold.
Rather than gather their armies, the four rulers opted to finish this war themselves. That day, King the Blue, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that, the Red, Lord Aronius of the Spirit Realm, and Count Lugosi von Orlok, Vampire Lord, entered the Tunguska forest and waged a great battle. The climax was reached when Lugosi himself squared off against the leader of the dwellers, a former vampire and Lugosi's brother, Karloff von Orlok. Using the last of his borrowed power, Karloff succeeded in producing a false dawn around him and his brother, killing them both and thus ending the war. Though they would certainly have perished by now, there are those who swore that a few dwellers escaped the purge and lived on in human society.
Could it be possible? Nonami asked aloud. Could Usako's grandmother have been a dweller? It's possible she could have bought the table without knowing. On the next page were early photographs and illustrations of the dwellers, and Nonami examined each and every one of them thoroughly. Despite still having the general outer appearance of their original form, one thing each dweller seemed to have in common was a pair of bone spikes jutting out from their shoulder blades. Strange, she pondered. What purpose could these possibly serve? Nonami sighed heavily and closed the book. Well, I guess I'll show this to Lydia. Maybe she'll have some clue. As she was about to put the book into her bag, a memory came rushing at her. When Usako transformed, aside from the change in clothes and weapons, she also gained a pair of wings. Thinking hard, the vampire tried to trace their path to where they might join the girl's body. No, it can't be, she muttered, frantically searching for the picture of the spikes. I'm just looking for patterns that aren't there, that's all. Finding the picture, Nonami mentally overlaid it onto Usako's body. The approximate base of the wings and the location of the bone spikes matched almost perfectly in her head, and Nonami's face went pale. No, it simply cannot be. Just then, her phone rang. It was Lydia. Yes, ma'am? What is it? Nonami! She shouted. There's trouble! It's a banshee this time, and it has Usako's sister. I'll be right there, she said, sprinting towards the door. Wait, hold on, there's something else we have to tell you. You're going to be accompanied by... Nonami, in a rush to hurry and aid her friends, had slammed the phone down on the receiver and bolted towards Usako's home. That girl is so impatient sometimes, sighed Lydia, turning to face the other person in the room with her. We're gonna trust you just this once. But if you even think of betraying us, Nonami has orders to cut you down. Is that clear? Eniko Ahame? As crystal, ma'am, smirked the blue-haired girl with a mock bow. The skies over Fumizaki City had become overcast, and you could feel the approaching storm in the air when Rei and Usako arrived at the pink-haired girl's home. At first, she thought she saw a figure darting through the halls, but paid it no mind. I'm just seeing things, she thought. No need to worry. When they finally entered Usako's modestly sized apartment, there was no mistaking it. Standing in the hallway was the faint outline of a figure phasing through a wall. Rei couldn't make out any discernible features, but she knew it was almost certainly a member of the spirit realm. It seemed that whatever it was, though, Usako couldn't see it. They only figured maybe Lydia sent it, but no, that couldn't be right. As far as Rei knew, there wasn't a single ghost, Dullahan, or banshee employed at the Japan branch. They scared Cecily something fierce. What in the name of Father's chin whiskers? She muttered, catching Usako's attention. Oh, did you say something, Rei? She inquired, knocking on her sister's bedroom door. Hey, Kiriko, you busy? Come on out. I got someone I want you to meet. Now very unsettled, Rei began to tell Usako to get back when the door slammed open, revealing the same individual Ray had seen previously, only now she was fully visible. Her silver hair shone, despite the lack of any light source, save for her eyes, which glowed an unearthly yellow-green. And in its cold hands was the unconscious form of Kuroko Takibana. "Kuroko!" screamed Usuko. "Release the girl now!" yelled a thoroughly pissed off Ray, "or suffer the force of my rage!" The translucent figure laughed, the tone echoing as though she was speaking from several places at once. Let me try that effect real quick here. You know what? Never mind. "I'm sorry, lassie, but the employers ordered me to obtain this girl through any means necessary. She's quite valuable, I'm told." With that, the spirit opened her mouth and shrieked loudly, the sound rattling Usuko down to her very core. It was a fight just to stay conscious, and it felt like her soul was screaming too, only in agonizing pain. When the noise finally subsided, the pale girl had vanished, and Kuroko along with her. "No," whimpered Usuko, falling to her knees as tears formed in the corners of her indigo eyes. Though it took Ray a moment to call in what had just happened to HQ, as soon as she had, she turned to Usuko. "Don't worry, Uso-chan," she said in a soothing tone as she knelt down to comfort her friend. "We'll find your sister. I promise." The Pinkette looked up at her and hugged tightly, refusing to let go. "Thank you, Ray," she sniffled. "Thank you." The Oni girl nodded softly. "Is it, like, just the two of you living here? I don't mean to be nosy." Usuko nodded in reply, looking down and smiling sadly. "Our father left us when I was little, so it was up to Mom to raise me and Kuroko, who was barely out of diapers at the time. She did as good a job as anyone could have, and we loved our mother dearly." The Pinkette closed her eyes, her voice trembling as she fought back the sadness she was feeling. "Last year, out of nowhere, our mother was killed. They never found the guy who did it, but it left me and Kuroko all alone in the world until we were taken in by the owner of this building. She's actually our cousin, you see." Usuko had to stop then. She couldn't say anything else because of the knot in her stomach that made her want to puke. Kuroko, the only thing she had left, was gone. Who knew what was going to happen to her? "Well, are you just going to sit there and mope then? Or are you going to get your sister back?" came a voice from the windowsill. The Usuko Takibana I knew would never let some stupid banshee steal his sister away. Not without a fight, that is. Looking up at the newcomer, Usuko gasped and scrambled backwards, crashing into an equally frightened Ray. "Emiko?" blurted the terrified Pinkette. "How did you... Why are you..." "My word, Uso-chan," replied Emiko. "Is it truly that distressing for you to see me again already?" Something about her tone made Usuko think that Emiko was regretful of her actions that night, but then, if she knew what she was doing was wrong, why did Emiko do it? And furthermore, why was she here at all? Wasn't she supposed to be in a containment cell back at HQ? None of this made any sense to Usuko at all. "Ayame," chided Ray, who had regained her cool by this point. "Now this is a surprise. But y'all don't like good behavior, did they?" "Something like that, yes," she replied calmly. "Also, because of a special talent that I happen to have, would be quite useful in this situation." "Special talent?" asked Usuko. "Yes, Uso-chan," smiled Emiko. "Its technical name is Amisel Kon's Orosol, or seeing which is not. In layman's terms, I can see ghosts, even when they're invisible." "Huh. I heard of some blues that had Amisel, but I figured it was just a rumor," said Ray. "But you're telling me you can, figure out where that silver-haired skank went with Uso-chan's sis?" "She had better," stated Nonami, seemingly appearing from nowhere behind Emiko. or it will be her head. Right, Ms. Ayame? The balloonette sighed in contempt and flipped her the bird, rather than answer Nanami's inquiry, but the implications were very clear. Now, would you mind telling whereabout the banshee went after taking Kuro-chan? Asked Rei of Emiko. Mr. Train, do you mind? It seems Mr. Train still minds. Very good. Thank you. Let's see. Now, would you mind telling... Oh, yeah, I remember that. Emiko nodded, and for a moment, all colors seemed to vanish from her eyes, leaving only the whites. The banshee is, at present, flying towards the shrine at the far edge of town. Emiko's voice sounded almost robotic as she gave directions. At its current rate, it should arrive at approximately 5 minutes from now. I would recommend that Rei Kobayashi and myself, utilizing our Shutendoji forms, transport Nanami Issei and Usuko Takebana on our backs, and fly there at top speed. You don't say! Grinned Rei as she morphed into her much larger second form. Never would have guessed that on my own. The large crimson Oni motioned for Usuko to climb on, the pinkette wrapping her arms tightly around the girl's massive shoulders. At the same time, Emiko mirrored her red counterpart, transforming into an azure near duplicate of the girl. Once both Usuko and Nanami had been secured, the two Oni activated their camouflage and took to the sky. As the quartet raced towards the temple where the banshee had taken Kuriko, Nanami's thoughts drifted back to the book she had read earlier. She thought about asking Usuko then and there about her grandmother, and if she knew where the table had come from, but decided against it. There would be time later, as long as they all survived this mission. Hey, Nanami! Called Usuko, barely audible over the roaring wind. You ever fought a banshee before? No, I'm afraid I haven't, shouted the vampire in reply. But, like most spirits, they're quite tricky, trust me. Be on your guard, that's the best advice I can give. Also, it gets, really freaking cold before they manifest, yelled Rei. They draw an energy from their surroundings in order to do, well, pretty much anything, and that includes thermal. So if the room suddenly gets cold, say something. Emiko sighed, mentally facepalming at the red Oni's stupidity as that girl spat out a mouthful of gray feathers. It was one of the first rules of flight her father had taught her back when she was still very young. Never open your mouth while in midair, otherwise you might swallow a bird. It was then their keen eyes spotted their target and motioned for the group to descend. Like a squad of fighter jets, Emiko and Rei barreled towards their silver-hued target, who was now sprinting through the dense forest below. At the last possible second, the Oni dumped their living cargo and landed in front of the startled banshee. Nanami and Usuko waltzing up from her rear, effectively cutting her off. Nowhere to run, banshee, stated Nanami in a semi-triumphant tone. Now why don't you let the girl go and surrender peacefully? To emphasize her point, Nanami manifested the breakdown spear in her left hand, the same weapon she had previously used to incapacitate Emiko. Something about this girl seemed oddly familiar to the vampire. She could swear she'd seen her someplace before. You think you got what it takes to beat me, do ya, lassies? Sneered the girl. By all means, I'd love to see you give it a go. Well, that said, I got an agenda for today, and Diane ain't on it. With that, she released the unconscious form of Kuriko and vanished into the trees. As Nanami and Emiko rushed after her, Usuko rushed to her sister, joined by Rei a moment later. Is she gonna, be okay? Asked the Oni, her tone clashing humorously with her intimidating form. I think so, replied the relieved Usuko, but we need to get her to a hospital, stat. Rei nodded and picked up the girl, cradling her limp form in her arms. I'll take care of her. You join up with the others. Don't worry about Kuro-chan. I'll keep her safe. Usuko nodded, and with that, Rei took off like a shot towards the hospital, praying to the gods that Kuriko wouldn't wake up until after she had made it there. By this time, the banshee, figuring she had managed to elude her pursuers, decided to take a quick rest at a nearby waterfall, using the kinetic energy to recharge her spiritual batteries. Damn, those lassies are a persistent bunch, she sighed, eyes closed. But there's no way in hell they'll find me here.
Is that so?
The girl's greenish-yellow eyes snapped open as she beheld the forms of Nonami Issei and Emiko Ayame standing over her, the former holding a wicked-looking scythe to her semi-tangible throat. Top of the afternoon to ya, she stammered. What can I do you for?
Quit the crap, Banshee, growled Emiko. Who hired you to kidnap Uso-chan's sister?
Sister? What do you mean? She asked in genuine confusion. That was Usuko Takibana I had in me grasp. Couldn't have been anyone but her. Unless... The Banshee thought for a moment about the description of the girl she had been given by her employer. You know, come to think of it, they never did mention any glasses. In hindsight, that should have been a dead giveaway. No pun intended. Nonami pushed the blade a little closer to the girl's throat, causing the Banshee to yelp in terror. Hi, what are you doing there, lassie? Don't you know I'm a spirit? Indeed, she replied coldly, and this scythe was designed for the sole purpose of slaying spirits. Pun intended. Now dispense with the humor and answer me. Who hired you? I'd tell you if I could, believe me, she spluttered, terrified, but I really don't know. He never told me his name. If you want, I can point you in the right direction, but... Nonami pulled the scythe back a bit. You had best be telling the truth. Aye, you know it, miss. It's the O'Malley clan oath that we never lie. O'Malley? Repeated Nonami. As in... Sarah O'Malley? The girl nodded. That's me name, don't wear it out. But how did you know that? The Banshee, Sarah, pondered for a moment before breaking out into a massive grin. Land of Goshen, if it isn't Maria von Orlock! Long time no see! Despite Sarah having little form to grab onto, the girls shared a brief but excited hug. Why, the last time I saw you, Maria, you were barely taller than a yardstick, but look at you now, she giggled, motioning towards Nonami's lack of height. You're about the same, aren't you? Nonami growled playfully at her long-lost friend's jab, helping her up off the ground. Glad to see you're still as mischievous as ever, Sarah. But while we're here in Japan, please call me by my assumed name, Nonami Issei. If you insist, I suppose, she replied. So, all things considered, I guess I'm off the hook then?
I'm afraid not, Banshee,
said Emiko, hands on her hips.
You still kidnapped a human, with the full intention of bringing harm to her, or bringing her to someone who would. You'll have to answer for your crimes when this is over.
Nonami casted a side eye in Emiko's direction at that statement. Sarah nodded in understanding. I figured as much. 'Tis the price I have to pay for getting caught, I suppose. At that moment, Uzuko came stumbling out of the brush, covered in various rashes and bug bites. I hate nature, she growled in frustration, and, upon spotting Sarah, her first reaction was to transform and lunge at the girl, screeching inhumanly, with her weapons blazing. The silver-haired girl simply sighed, dispersed her form into a fog, and let the enraged magical girl pass through her harmlessly. Aye, lassie, she said, her disembodied voice echoing. I'm not going to say this more than once. Don't start something you can't finish. You kidnapped my sister, shouted Usuko. You think I'm just going to let you get away with it? You nuts? Usuko, sighed Nonami. Sarah already surrendered and has agreed to show us where the person who hired her is. For the love of Zeus, don't make things any more difficult than they need to be. Right, she said, a likely story. Considering I've known this girl since I was a child, I have no reason to doubt her, stated the vampire, her patience growing thin. Now please stop this. You'll only succeed in making a fool of yourself. With a deep sigh, Usako transformed back and bowed her head in apology. I tell you what, lassie, said Sarah, putting a transparent arm around the girl's shoulder. One of these days, you and I can have a good old-fashioned brawl for the heck of it. I'll even give you a handicap and stay in a physical form. Yeah, sure, she sighed. Sounds fun, I guess. By the time Ray arrived at the hospital, the heavens had opened up and began pouring rain upon the earth. As the red-haired girl gazed out the window, she couldn't help but feel useless. Geez, now how am I supposed to, join the others? She sighed in defeat. I can't fly in this weather. As if God himself wanted to drive this point home, a massive bolt of lightning struck a nearby car, causing Ray to yelp and jump back from the window. And walking is sure as hell out of the question. A small, pitiful groan came from the bed behind her, and Ray turned around to face Kuriko, who had finally begun to regain consciousness. Where am I? She whispered hoarsely. Shh, Kao-chan, said Ray soothingly as she pulled up a chair next to the young girl. You're in the hospital now. You, fell down some stairs. Ray winced mentally, wishing she could have thought of a better excuse than that. Just about anything, really, would have been better. I did? The younger Pinkette checked herself for injuries, but found none. Are you sure? Of course, stammered Ray. Don't be silly, Kuro-chan. Who are you, anyway? I kind of remember you from earlier. Ray, sorry about not introducing myself before. I'm Ray Kobayashi. I'm a friend of your sister's from school. Another bolt of lightning flashed, and the power went out for the whole building. Ray jumped, hitting her head on the low-hanging ceiling. Are you okay, Miss Kobayashi? Asked Kuriko. Sure am. She nodded as blood spurted from her head. After several minutes of walking, the group arrived at the abandoned shrine, which, according to Sarah anyway, was where the person who hired her resided. They had better be, gasped Usako, completely out of breath from the steep uphill trek. Aye, it's true, claimed Sarah. He should be right beyond... Hold on. She should be right beyond these doors here, I swear it. Nonami nodded. I see no reason to doubt you, Sarah, she said quietly. Still, could you please phase in there for a moment and check for guards and the like? Aye, that I can do, replied the Banshee as she faded from view. You sure we can trust her, Nanami-san? Muttered Usako as she scratched at the various rashes now covering her body. I mean, it's awfully convenient that this girl just happens to be your childhood friend. The vampire sighed in exasperation. Usako-san, while I can respect your feelings of animosity towards Sarah, I can also assure you that she is not someone who would knowingly lie to anyone, especially not me. The O'Malley clan is one of the most influential families in the spirit realm, and well known for their honesty, never telling a lie, even if it means death. The Pinkette nodded in acknowledgement. That's just it, though. What if she doesn't know she's lying to you? Where are you going with this, Usako? Inquired Emiko, also interested in what her friend was proposing. At that moment, a loud clap of thunder rang through the area, startling Usako. Then all at once, the heavens began pouring down on the girls. Ah, crap, crap, crap! Shouted Usako, scrambling for cover. Well, that's just lovely, sighed the Blue Oni. Oi, Usako! What was it you were saying again? I forgot, replied Usako sheepishly with a weak grin. Sorry. It was then that Sarah's ethereal face appeared before Nonami. You're all clear, she stated. Place seems to be empty. Thank you, Sarah, replied Nonami, opening the door as the spectral girl reformed. Come, everyone, the closest Her words were interrupted as a silver blade was thrust through her stomach. Maria! Shrieked Sarah as she turned towards the direction the blade had come from. Impossible! there was no one in there a second ago. And it was true. A moment ago, the room had been unoccupied, or rather appeared to be. But now, facing the enraged group, was a room full of what seemed to be skeletal warriors dressed in feudal Japanese samurai armor.
Thought you said the place was empty, Foggy, snarled Emiko. Looks pretty full to me.
I swear it was, she cried. I wouldn't lie to you.
By now, Usuko was fed up with all this crap. First, her sister gets kidnapped. She gets covered in rashes and bug bites from head to toe. Then it starts pouring rain, and now her friend gets run through by a freaking zombie samurai straight out of a video game. And all of that on top of everything else that had happened in the past 24 hours. Enough is enough, she said through gritted teeth. I have had just about all I can take of this weird shit. I... It's not any more about Dragon Ball Z scream, but I can't neighbors. Also, ow, my throat. The yokai crystal around Usuko's neck began shaking and flying in every direction, changing from faint pink to deep blood red. Her hair turned black as coal, and her eyes changed from azure to yellow gold. Her skin lost some of its color as the wings on her back changed from white to black, like someone had poured ink down them. Her gold bat manifested in her hand like usual, but now it was ringed in an odd green-gold flame, which trailed in an arc wherever she swung. And swing she did. In a blur of light and sound, she engaged each of the skeletons, not letting up on her barrage of blows for even a moment. Oh, God. Whispered Nonami weakly. Now that she could get a better look at the wings, Nonami was certain that they matched up with the bone spikes she had seen. She tried to speak up, but instead began violently coughing up blood.
Oh, right.
She thought as her vision began to blur.
I guess I'm dying. They must have expected a vampire would come, so they used silver.
With that, Nonami lost consciousness. Her last hope was that if she didn't survive, that she would at least be reunited with her father.
Maria, stay with me!
Screamed Sarah, cold tears dripping onto Nonami's face.
My God, is anyone here a doctor?
As the last of the skeletal minions was felled, Usuko turned to face her fallen comrade.
Usuko,
pleaded Sarah.
Isn't there anything you can do for her?
Shaking her head, she laid a hand on Nonami's stomach. I can only try. Focusing with all her might on saving her newfound friend, Usuko's eyes began glowing softly as the bleeding slowed and the wound started knitting itself closed. Then, with a sharp gasp, she collapsed onto the ground in an unconscious heap, returning to normal as she did. Emiko sighed and picked up both girls in her arms.
Hey, what do you think you're doing?
Shouted Sarah. What do you think I'm going to do? Play dress up with them and have a tea party? Snapped Emiko, quickly turning invisible. I'm taking them to HQ's medical wing. You can just get lost for all I care. With that, Emiko flew off towards Ayanami Industries, leaving a teary-eyed Sarah behind. I know what I saw, she said, dispersing her form into the fog that had begun to form now that the rain had stopped. And I swear I'll get to the bottom of this. Gonna go a little longer here. What? Screamed Lydia, having just received the report of Nonami's condition.
Yes, ma'am,
mumbled the messenger, a young ape boy named Aru Sarugami.
They succeeded in rescuing Takibana-san's sister, but were attacked by a group of undead skeleton warriors. Issei-sama was run through with a silver blade and would have died if not for Takibana-san's actions.
Sitting back down in her chair, Lydia was quiet for a moment, allowing herself to take the news in. Could you repeat that last part? She inquired. Aru did as instructed, and Lydia's brow furrowed. The undead? And in large numbers, too. They were dealing with a powerful foe, all right. Do we know anything about this new ability of Usako's? I don't know, he replied, nervously swaying his simian tail around. According to Ayame Hime, Usako-san used some sort of magic to heal Ise-sama's wounds. You might ask her? Very well. You are dismissed, Saragami-kun, said Lydia, turning towards the window. But if you see Ms. Ayame, tell her to come see me. The young boy nodded dutifully in reply and sprinted from the room as Emiko picked up her phone and called Emiko's cell. Come on, pick up, she muttered as it rang.
Hello! You've reached Emiko! Cheered the pre-recorded voicemail message. Can't talk right now, but leave me a message and I'll get back to you. Promise.
Who's this? Chuckled a bemused Lydia as the beep sounded. Emiko Ame. I need to speak to you as soon as possible. Come to my office when you get this message. On the other side of the building, in the infirmary, Usako was resting as Emiko sat next to her, keeping watch over her friend as she slept. Uso-chan, she whispered, absent-mindedly stroking the girl's hair. At that moment, a boy ran by the room, stopped halfway down the hall, and sprinted backwards, tripping over his shoelaces and crashing into the floor outside the room. Oh, Ayame-hime! He spluttered, blushing from both embarrassment and the sight of Emiko's radiant face. May I help you? She asked with a slight giggle. Nakamoto-sama wants to see you ASAP, he replied as he stood back up, trying to catch his breath. Says it's urgent. Emiko smiled softly, causing young Sarogami to blush even more. Tell Lydia I'll happily speak with her once Usako has regained consciousness. Can you do that for me, please? The boy nodded with a gulp and sped off towards Lydia's office once more. It's a good thing this job pays so well, he thought, because all this back and forth running is really hard on my lungs. What a cutie, whispered Emiko to herself. That's scrawny for my taste, though. From the bed, Emiko heard a soft chuckle, so she looked down and saw Usako's eyes were slightly open.
So, he's your type, huh, Emi-chan?
She giggled weakly.
Didn't know you were a Shotokan.
I am not! She shot back, her face almost as bright red as Ray's hair. Jeez, Usako! The two fell quiet for a moment before Emiko spoke up again. Uso-chan, I wanted to apologize for last night. I don't know what came over me. But I know I said and did some things. Awful things to you. I didn't mean any of it, I swear. The girl turned her head down. Her long azure bangs created a shadow that covered her eyes, though even that could not hide the twin streams of tears that had begun to flow down from them as she began trembling. We've always been friends, and even though you're human, I never thought badly of you. Even my father took a liking to you, and that's saying a lot. But something caused me to act that way, and I just wish I knew what. The pinkette turned to face her friend and put her arms around her, hugging the now crying girl.
It's fine, Emi-chan, she said soothingly. Even then, I knew that the real Emiko would never do or say those things. It just wasn't like you. I'm always going to have your back, Emiko. Usako reached up and wiped the tears away from Emiko's eyes. That's what friends are for. Uso-chan. The pinkette squinted, a puzzled expression crossing her face. I thought your eyes were brown, Emi-chan. What's up with the purple rain? Emiko sighed, chuckling softly, and rubbed her eyes. My eyes are naturally purple, like any oni. They're the only thing we can't disguise. Fortunately, these glasses of mine have a nifty feature that alters their visible color. About that time, the door opened, and another bed was wheeled into the room, containing the sedated form of Nonami Issei. Looks like... wrong person. Looks like Issei-san made it out of surgery, Uso-chan, said Emiko. Yep, and she should pull through with flying colors, called the voice of Lydia Nakamoto as she stood in the doorframe. And you're correct, Usuko. Emiko Ayame probably wouldn't do any of those things. Not of her own will, anyway. Which might explain what these were doing in her body. The violet-haired cat girl held up a vial containing a sample of Emiko's blood, with a strange, silver powder-like substance floating at the surface. Pretty sophisticated pieces of tech, really. Well, we're almost done, right? If you can hang on another 10 minutes, I mean... Or maybe a little more than that, but we're almost to the end. But, up to you. Anyway, continuing. The room had been completely silent for 10 minutes, save for the steady beeping coming from Nonami's heart monitor. The news they had just been given was shocking, to say the least, the very least, and all the more so for Emiko. So, you're saying that I was being controlled that night? She asked, several emotions flowing through her voice at once, rage being chief among them. That's the way it would seem. Oh, wrong person. That's the way it would seem, replied Lydia solemnly. This here is the culprit. The purple-haired cat girl motioned to a screen on the wall, upon which was displayed a diagram of some sort of bizarre nanomachine. When we took your blood earlier, we didn't notice these guys at first because they were hiding inside of your cells, apparently. However, after a little while, we took a second look, and lo and behold, we found them. Wow, that's a terrible word, I'm saying. And lo and behold, we found them. But who did this? Exclaimed the now seriously enraged brunette, her form flickering between human and Oni, as her focus on maintaining the illusion faltered. Who would dare to use Emiko Ayame as a pawn? Lydia shook her head. We have no idea at all, Ms. Ayame, she replied, and what's more, these things are probably still inside you at this very moment. Emiko's eyes widened in both shock and horror. Her stomach dropped, and she began to feel sick. Isn't there anything you could do to get them out of me? She cried. Come on, there has to be, right? The older woman sighed and turned away, closing her eyes. Theoretically, yes. These are machines, so they must run on some form of energy. If we could somehow drain that energy from them, they would be rendered useless by your body's natural defense. They would be rendered useless, and your body's natural defenses should be able to eliminate them from there. Sarah, said Usuko in realization. She's a spirit, right? Ray told me that spirits can drain energy from their surroundings. So couldn't she do that for you too, Emi-chan? The brunette sighed awkwardly and turned away. That might be a bit difficult. I was quite rude to her before and said some pretty cruel things. I'm certain she hasn't forgiven me. An amused chuckle echoed through the room, causing the brunette to jump. Well, it's true you were an inconsiderate, intolerable, and just plain rude little... Well, I won't say it in front of Maria. I can't rightly leave you like this now, can I? Nonami, who was sedated out of her mind and thus barely aware of the present situation, smiled softly at the sound of her oldest friend's voice. Thank you, she rasped quietly, though no one present was able to hear her. Now then, we'd need to go someplace without any other interference, stated Sarah as she materialized out of thin air behind Usuko. Since I'll be drawing in all the ambient energy close to me, the further I am from other, more plentiful sources, the easier it'll be to suck those little buggers dry. Why not use the cellar? Inquired Lydia as she quietly eyed the newcomer, It's got several feet of solid concrete between it and the rest of the building, and aside from Cecily's collection of exotic cat toys, it's completely empty.
Usako giggled quietly to herself as she thought about the current situation she was in. There was a thick-accented Irish banshee, an airheaded cat girl whose office was like a cat lady's paradise, and who collected exotic cat toys. Herself, a magical girl who seemed to be more than met the eye, and two Onis whose personalities and figures were as different as night and day. It was like Valhalla for cliches. What's next? A werewolf will show up swearing to avenge Nonami? She thought as the door slammed open. In stormed a girl with long, brown, unkempt hair who went right up to Nonami's bedside and knelt down beside her. Why do I say things when I know they're going to come true?
My lady, forgive me,
moaned the newcomer who knelt at the injured vampire's bedside.
If I'd known what had occurred, your ladyship, I'd have rushed to your side immediately.
As Nonami reached down to gently lay a hand on her head, it quickly jerked upwards, and Usako was able to get a better look at her. She was clearly of foreign descent, though Usako couldn't tell for certain where she was from. Spain, perhaps? Maybe Italy? Her hair was long and messy, as though she had never even heard of a brush, and her eyes were wide, or large, like those of an animal, and were a piercing green, not unlike a sprawling meadow. When she opened her mouth, Usako could see that her teeth were jagged and sharp, like a mountain range, and interestingly, she wore braces, which seemed to be the cause of her lisp.
Hush, Chris,
whispered Nonami to the girl. I'm going to be fine. But the girl shook her head, causing her wild brown hair to fly around.
How can you be fine when you're injured in such a way? Oh, I'm such a failure. Please forgive me.
The vampire just sighed as Usako leaned over to her and asked,
Hey, Nonami? Who is she?
Christina Pavlovic, replied the vampire.
She's head of my security detail, I suppose you could say.
For a moment, Usako just sat there and stared into space.
Wait, security detail? But, huh?
It was then that the pinkette looked over and saw the girl staring at her, much like a lioness would a hyena near her cubs, growling quietly.
Sorry,
she said, backing away from the strange girl. Don't worry about her, Usako, reassured Nonami. She's just making sure you aren't a threat, and that you know it.
Right.
By now, Lydia, Emiko, and Sarah had all left for the cellar so that the Banshee could sap the strange nanomachines of their energy, leaving only Usako with the injured Nonami and the possibly crazy wolf girl.
Where's Ray when you need her?
She thought to herself with a gulp. And I think that's where I'll end it, because there's a little more past that than I expected. So yeah, we'll start this next reading with that. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Nanomachines, yeah, literally, it's nanomachines, son. And with that, it's the last swig of my lemonade. So before y'all go, I just kind of want to know, what did you think of part 2? There'll probably be one more stream of this. Going forward, because, yeah. Metal Gear! Ray, you need to make sure that you check the, you watch the VOD of it, because there's a big Ava reference right there towards the beginning, when they get into Cecily's office. Literally, I had just read it, and then Pen showed, like, 10 seconds later, Pen showed up. So it was like, oh my god. Yeah. I'm glad y'all liked it, though. So yeah, we'll be doing more of this. Yeah, we'll probably next time we read this, it'll probably be the last stream for book 1. And then we can get on to book 2. Book 2 is a lot longer than book 1. Like, book 1, it's a good length. Book 2 is like, woo. I'm not, it's not like it's not like Tolkien length, but like, it takes like a good 30 seconds at least to scroll to the bottom of the page. So, anyway, thank you for coming by and celebrating Usako's birthday with me today. It was fun reading this.
I love getting to read my book. I love sharing it with people. Someday this will get published. Someday. Hopefully. But, yeah. So, until next time, have a good night. Take care. Make sure you wish Usako a happy birthday before you go to bed. And I'll see you next time. Bye, Anara.